in 1980, I was 26 years old and single and very enthusiastic and very ambitious about life. I was actually 26 years of age and thinking at this age, probably I should be looking for something more than what I'm actually doing, which was actually working just a regular retail job. I was working at the Kmart store in Haynes Road, New York, and I thought, this has been good, but 26 turns into 27, and 27 turns into 28, and I should be probably doing a little bit more of my life than what I've been doing so far. So I thought to myself, well, what should I do? And I thought, I should probably look around a little bit and see what's available out there. I should also preface this story by saying that I'm from a retail family. My dad was a 45-year veteran of Sears and Roebuck, so he was always at work, and he just thought Sears and Roebuck was the best thing since ice cream. We had Kenmore appliances, we had Die-Hard batteries, we had Craftsman tools. If Sears would have sold houses and cars, we'd have had one of those. I think my sister would have been from Sears if we would have had one of that available as well too. So that's how much retail was drilled into my head. So my brother actually worked for Montgomery Ward's too, which some of you may remember, which has been long since out of business for years. But so it was in my blood. My toe was in the retail pool for sure. So, but I'm thinking at my age, do I really want to do this? And I'm thinking if I do, is it going to be here? And I thought, probably not. So I thought, well, I guess I'll do what everybody did in 1980 when I'm looking for another job. I actually looked into help wanted ads. So I actually, canvassed those for a couple weeks and finally saw something I thought might work for me. So I thought, I'll try this. So it was actually another local retailer, S. Grumbacher & Son, which most of you might remember or may not know is actually the Bon-Ton stores, and to some lesser degree also Mailman's as well. So between Montgomery Ward's, Sears, Kmart, and S. Grumbacher, I'm 0 for 4 with retailing. So they're all out of business. So I guess the Shiffer name doesn't really endear too many retailers. So, but I thought, well, I'm going to give this a shot. They were actually looking for what they called an operations manager trainee, and that was actually to open a new store. This was actually in June of 80, and the new store was to open in October of 81, which was actually going to be called the Mailman's North Mall, which some of you may remember. They were also opening up the Bon-Ton West Manchester Mall a few months before that. So the job actually entailed operations manager you would actually be you're in charge of all the non-selling departments. You're in personnel, you're doing accounts payable, receiving, they had a marketing room. So those are the kind of things that would have been my responsibility. So I thought, well, I can do that. So I went in and applied for the job, which is when you actually had to go to apply for the job. You don't do it online like you do today. So I went down to the corner of Market and Beaver Street where they had their corporate offices and actually filled out an application, met one of the personnel people there, and actually had like a little bit of a pre-interview. You get to see them, they get to see you, so it kind of worked out nice that way. So after that, I thought, okay, I like this, and of course they told me what they tell everybody else. We're not sure what we're going to do. We'll let you know if we're interested in doing further with you. So I thought, okay, well, that works. So it got to be about 2 weeks after that, and I thought, well, this doesn't look too good. I may not have a shot at this thing after all. So, but lo and behold, the next day I get a phone call. Hi, this is Linda from the Bon-Ton. We'd like to offer you the job you applied for. I thought, well, hot damn, how about that? So I thought, pretty good. That sounds good to me. So I thought I could really, maybe send my life down a different path here and make a little better future for myself. At least have something I had some goals at and could see where it might end. So I actually was told to actually report to the Bon-Ton York Mall, which at the time was their actual main store in York. Of course, the Bon-Ton or S. Grumbacher was, situated in York, was their home base. And I was told to report to a gentleman by the name of Norm. So that was fine. So he was actually doing the same thing at that store that I'd be doing in my new position had I made it through probation and actually was able to do the job. So what I found out in the meantime was that I thought I won this job on my merit and my good looks and my ability to do the job. Well, I found out later after I was hired and actually worked the job for a while that the gentleman who actually did the hiring at the Bon-Ton, who actually made the decision, was actually one of my dad's best friends from Sears. It was his son. So I thought, okay, well, that didn't make me feel too good, but I thought, well, maybe I actually got the job on credentials and not just the fact that I knew somebody. But it does pay to know somebody for sure. So I was told to report to this gentleman by the name of Norm, who was actually the operations manager there at that store, and he had an assistant there by the name of Anna. And they were kind of like the two people that actually ran that store. He was in charge of all the non-cell departments, like I was going to be at the new mailman store. And Anna was in charge of all the sales department. So we kind of got together as a group and made like a little team. And I thought to myself, this is actually pretty cool. Also at the Bon-Ton York Mall, you actually had one side of the building was actually operations. The other side was actually the upstairs buying staff. So all the buyers for the Bon-Ton who did all the buying for all their stores, you know, fashion, men's fashion, housewares, those kind of things were all located over there. And the operations department was on this side of the building. So, and, you know, being a Bon-Ton customer, I realized over the year that Bon-Ton has a tendency to hire some pretty people. And they just do. So I was well aware of that when I actually started the job. And the nice thing about this was my office was actually right across the hall from the operator, who actually, in those days, we had plug-in switchboards. There was no electronics back then. It was all, you know, if you're familiar with Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, Lily Tomlin, plug in, you know, the old things in and out of the actual switchboard. So this lady was quite amazing. She could, probably one of the best multitaskers I've ever met in my life. She could take phone calls for buyers or the sales department or one of us, and also talk to customers on the line as well. And really, at the time, she was able to do so many things. It was kind of like I was hanging out there only because she hung all the buyer's notes on the actual switchboard. So I was like a polar bear waiting for the salmon to come upstream. I was going to grab onto one of these women if I could do it. So my boss actually figured out what I was doing and said, hey, you got to learn how to do your job first. I said, you're right. He actually said to me, he called me, and he was a very, very cool guy, very low-keyed, really cared more about having fun than he did working, which was fine with me. He said, are you a single guy? I said, yeah. He said, well, I got a little bit of advice for you. He said, you don't want to shit where you eat. I said, okay, I got you. I get what you're saying. Okay. So I kind of got the gist of what he was saying, and I kind of thought to myself, I better learn my job and let this kind of other stuff go. So as it turns out, I actually, did make it through that probation period. Actually, we did open the store in October of '81. And actually what happened in the meantime was I actually met Anna's daughter. Okay, she was a 22-year-old girl, fresh out of college. She had come in there to see her mother, and her and I just got together and started to talk, started to date, got to be a lot of dating, a lot of going out, and in 6 months we were engaged, okay? And within another 6 or 7 months or so, we were actually married. So it kind of happened very quickly. So from meeting this woman to getting engaged and getting married was like a 15-month episode. I was 27, she was 21, so there was quite a bit of age difference there too. So it was different, but it was fun. But we actually had a great time for the first year and a half of our marriage. We actually bought a house and had a lot of good memories from that house. I married into a very, very Italian family, who was nothing really short of Godfather too. I mean, these people either loved you or they didn't. And this family, thankfully, loved me. So they were very well as far as, doing things for me and welcoming me into the family. So one day, and my father-in-law was actually a mailman in the city who actually had a walking beat. He actually delivered his mail walking through the streets of York. So she came to our house one day with a shoebox full of razor blades. And I thought, what the heck is this? She said, well, these are from your father-in-law. You may want to put these up in your attic. I said, put razor blades up in my attic. I'm thinking, what the heck? Why am I doing this? And I thought, oh, okay. 2 weeks later, she comes with another shoebox of pistachio nuts. You may want to put these up in your attic. I'm thinking, okay, these are hot. These are hot items. My father-in-law apparently was lifting this stuff, giving it to me, and I had to keep it in my attic in case the cops came to my house, I guess. I'm not really sure why, but that's the story. So that's the kind of family I was married into at the time. So to make a long story short, we unfortunately got divorced, and she left the house. She actually got remarried. I got remarried. My wife's here tonight. And, we hadn't seen each other for a long, long time. I got very close to her mother, Anna, so we had a great relationship. And I kind of reconnected with my ex-wife through Facebook. We talked back and forth to each other, and I knew her mother was having some issues. So I found out eventually that her mother had passed away at 92. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to this funeral. This is something I liked her. I really enjoyed her company. I want to be part of her, just saying goodbye. So I actually asked my wife, I said, would you please come with me? She said, no, I'm not going to your ex-wife's mother's funeral. I said, well, please reconsider. And then she said, well, you know what? You do a lot of things for me you don't want to do, so I'm going to come along. So we actually went to her funeral, a viewing as well, and a service all in one. And I walk into the funeral home and meet I realize this is an Italian family, so they all know each other. They're all very tight. And I knew most of these people there too as well. So it was a situation where I walked in and said hello to my ex-brother-in-law and his wife and some of the family, their kids, and it was just a people that I knew. Actually, my dentist was actually in that family, so I met all those people, talked to all those people. My wife and I stood in line. I actually got to the receiving line where my ex-wife was, and she was actually standing there. We were actually behind another person there to give her greetings. And we get up there, and right as I faced my ex-wife, she gives me this look. She goes like, I'm drawing a blank. She says, your face is familiar, but I can't think of the name. Now, I grant you, this is 40 years since we've seen each other, but we had remained a little bit in contact. So I looked at my wife and said, we thought she was kidding. We really thought she was kidding. She wasn't kidding. So love is definitely blind, I will tell you that for sure. So, but as it turned out, she had a daughter to her ex-husband, her last husband, who she actually unfortunately got divorced from as well. But she had a daughter, and her daughter recognized me from photos. As we walked up to the receiving line and she introduced me to her daughter, her daughter said, Mom, I know who he is. I was looking at pictures last week of that wedding. I knew who he was right away. So I'm not really sure what happened, whether she was high, I don't know. I guess she was tense, or she was not herself for sure. But I thought to myself, did I really change that much over the course of time? But people assure me that I didn't. But proof is in the pudding, I guess. But yeah, so that was my better half for a couple of years. But I have one now that's much better. But so.